The Kethrak warship descended through the atmosphere like a falling mountain. Made of Nightmare and Chiton Governor Talvix watched from the observation deck of the Planetary Defense Center as the massive vessel blotted out the sun over New Meridian. Colonia's 3 hearts hammered in his chest cavity. Every species in the galaxy knew what came next, though. Kethrak had conquered 70% of known space over 3,000 years. They were the apex predators of the cosmos no military force had ever defeated them in open combat. Their hive mind coordinated billions of warriors with perfect unity. Their weapons dissolve matter at the molecular level. Their hunger for expansion knew no limits. Talvix activated the colony-wide communication system. With a trembling appendage, "This is Governor Talvix," he announced to the 6 million souls under his protection. "The Kethrak have arrived. All defensive forces are ordered to power down weapons and await instructions. Do not resist, I repeat. Do not resist." The words tasted like poison in his mouth. But he knew the alternative 12 systems had tried to fight the Kethrak in the last century. 12 systems were now asteroid fields and radiation-soaked wastelands. Great ships settled over the capital city like a predator crouching over prey. Its shadows stretched for kilometers, landing struts the size of skyscrapers punched into the earth. Then came the demand. It arrived, not as sound, but as a psychic pressure that made every sentient being on the planet clutch their heads in pain. The voice of the Queen Mind spoke directly into their consciousness. "You are acclaimed. Surrender all military assets. Provide tribute of 1 million able-bodied citizens for integration into the swarm. Resistance means extinction." Talvix transmitted the colonies. Immediate surrender within 30 seconds. He had practiced this moment in simulations. Every governor in Kethrak-controlled space practiced this moment's speed of surrender, often determined. How many people survived the occupation? The Kethrak drones began pouring from the ship within minutes. They moved with disturbing coordination. Each drone stood 3 meters tall on 4 legs. Their bodies were covered in black chitinous armor that seemed to absorb light. Razor's sharp mandibles clicked in perfect rhythm. Thousands of them, tens of thousands, they spread through the city like a living tide. Citizens fled into their homes. The drones paid them no attention, yet they were cataloging, assessing, counting resources. The Galactic Council had long since stopped pretending it had any real authority. It existed only because the Kethrak allowed it to exist. The Council served as a convenient administrative body for managing tributary species. It collected taxes. It resolved minor dispute. It maintained the illusion that the galaxy had some form of civilized order, but everyone knew the truth. The Kethrak ruled everything. They simply chose to rule through proxies because direct management of every world would be inefficient. Talvix had studied the history obsessively, like all colonial governors did. Kethrak had emerged from their homeworld in the Kepler 442 system roughly 3 millennia ago. First, the galaxy had not been concerned. They were just another spacefaring species, but the Kethrak possessed something that made them unstoppable. Perfect hive unity. A single Queen Mind controlled every Kethrak in existence, billions of bodies, one consciousness. They never argued, ever hesitated, never broke ranks. Every warrior was willing to die instantly because death meant nothing to a hive mind. Losing 1,000 drones was like a human losing 1,000 skin cells. Irreplaceable. Their military tactics were flawless because they were coordinated by a single strategic intelligence that controlled every unit simultaneously. They learned from every battle because every warrior's experience fed back into the collective consciousness, and they were biologically terrifying. Each drone could tear through reinforced steel with its bare claws. They could survive in vacuum for hours. They required minimal nutrition. They reproduced rapidly. Were evolution's perfect killing machines. 3 hours after landing, the Kethrak began the selection process. Citizens were herded into the central plaza. Drones walked among them, scanning, choosing those selected for integration, or marked with a bioluminescent tag that would be taken to the hive ships. There, bodies would be broken down. Their useful genetic material would be incorporated into new Kethrak variants. Their memories would be absorbed into the Queen Mind. It was not death exactly, it was something worse. Talvix watched from his office as families were torn apart, mothers screaming, children crying, but no one fought. No one won, because running meant the entire colony would be sterilized. The Ketheric had established this precedent long. Kubadines meant survival. For most resistance, meant extinction for Alos. The sun set on New Meridian Colony. The Ketheric operation was already concluding. They were efficient in 18 hours they would have their tribute. They would install monitoring stations. They would leave a garrison then. It would move on to the next system. This was the reality of the galaxy. This was how things had been for longer than most species. Head records the Ketheric were inevitable. The Ketheric were eternal. The Ketheric were unbeatable. But in the chaos of the occupation, something went unnoticed. A small cargo vessel fled the system on the opposite side of the planet. It was old and barely functional. Its engines leaked radiation. Its hull was patched with mismatched materials on board were 73 refugees who had managed to escape before the Ketheric blockade fully formed. They were heading for an uncharted system. They had heard rumors about Tay, place where no galactic authority had yet reached. Tay Backwater Yellow Dwarf System, third planet from its star. There refugees hoped to disappear there, to hide, to survive, but their departure had not gone completely unnoticed. A Ketheric scout ship on the edge of the system detected the fleeing vessel's energy signature. Though Scout's consciousness reported to the Queenmind. Queenmind examined the data. An unregistered ship design, primitive but functional, heading toward an unknown system. Curiosity was not an emotion the Ketheric often experienced, but the Queenmind felt something approximating. Interest in known species were rare these days. Most of the galaxy had been catalogued. This represented a potential resource, new genetic material, new technologies. To absorb new worlds, to claim the Queenmind made a notation in her vast consciousness. When the New Meridian operation concluded, she would dispatch a hunting pack. They would track this vessel to its origin. They would investigate this unknown species. They would determine if it was worth incorporating into the swarm. The Queenmind did not expect any surprises. In 3,000 years of conquest, she had encountered every form of resistance imaginable. She had faced warrior races who fought with fanatical courage. She had absorbed technological species with weapons that could crack planets. She had overcome psychic civilizations who could manipulate reality itself. All had been integrated or exterminated. This unknown species would be no different. The Queenmind was certain of this. She was always certain. She was never wrong. She was the Ketheric, and the Ketheric were inevitable. The Ketheric hunting pack emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system. 3 ships configured for long-range reconnaissance and subjugation. The Queenmind directed their sensors toward the inner planets. What they found was disappointing. The third planet showed clear signs of industrial civilization, but remained pre-space ferrogrammative chemical rockets, no faster-than-light capability, no energy shields, no plasma weapons. The beings there called themselves humans. Initial biological scans revealed a species that seemed almost laughably weak. No natural armor, no claws or fangs. Worth mentioning, no hive coordination. Fragmented into hundreds of competing political entities. Average lifespan, barely a century. The Queenmind processed this information with the equivalent of disappointment. This species posed no threat. They possessed nothing worth absorbing except perhaps their planet's resources. Still, protocol demanded proper subjugation. The Queenmind selected a single ship for the operation. The cruiser Devourers Patience. It carried 50,000 warrior drones and enough firepower to crack the planet's crust, if necessary, but such measures would not be needed. Devourers Patience entered Earth's orbit on a Tuesday morning in March. Every radio telescope on the planet detected it simultaneously. Every satellite tracked its descent. Every military installation went to maximum alert. The ship was massive, beyond anything humanity had built, dwarfed the International Space Station. It made aircraft carriers look like toys. General Sarah Chen stood in the emergency command center beneath Colorado, watching the threat assessment scroll across multiple screens. How long until it reaches weapons range? She demanded. It's already there, ma'am. A young analyst replied. It's been in weapons range since it appeared. Why hasn't it fired? Unknown, ma'am. The United Nations Security Council convened an emergency session. The American president was on a secure line with the Russian premier. Chinese military had mobilized and NATO forces scrambled. But there was no unified command. No Single authority humanity had never needed one before the Kethrak message arrived in every language. Simultaneously, it bypassed communication systems entirely. Every human on Earth heard it directly in their mind. The psychic pressure was unlike anything humanity had experienced. Millions of people collapsed, hospitals flooded with patients reporting severe migraines. The message was simple. You are claimed by the Kethrak swarm. Cease all military operations. Prepare for integration. Resistance will result in planetary sterilization. You have 6 of your hours to comply. The Security Council erupted into chaos. Russian ambassador demanded immediate surrender. The American representative argued for negotiation. The Chinese delegate insisted on more time to assess. The smaller nations shouted to be heard. This was humanity's fatal flaw by Kethrak's standards. No unity, no single decision maker, just endless debate and disagreement. The Queen Mind watched through the censors of Devourer's patient. She had seen this before. Individualistic species always fractured under pressure. They would argue until the deadline passed. Then she would demonstrate her power. Then they would surrender, as they all did. But General Chen was not waiting for politicians to decide. She had spent her entire career preparing for hostile contact. Protocols were clear and known. Hostile force demand for surrender, threat of extinction. Her orders were simple. Buy time and gather intelligence. She authorized a response. Not surrender, not defiance. Just a request for clarification. We have received your message. The transmission began. We request 24 hours to coordinate our response. We have no unified planetary government. We need time to reach consensus. The Kethrak had encountered this before. A stalling tactic would not work. The Queen Mind decided to demonstrate the futility of resistance. She selected a target, remote military installation in the Australian outback. Minimal civilian casualties. Clear demonstration of power. Devourer's patients rotated in orbit. A single weapon port opened. A beam of coherent energy lanced down through the atmosphere. The installation and everything within a kilometer radius simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not exploded, just gone. Converted 2 component atoms and scattered. The message was clear. Comply. General Chen watched the satellite footage, her jaw clenched around. The world military commanders waited for orders. Politicians were still arguing. The UN Secretary General was calling for calm. Religious leaders were praying. Scientists were calculating. In humanity's oldest instinct awakened, the instinct that had carried them from caves to cities. Instinct that had driven them to explore every corner of their world. Instinct that refused to accept the word impossible. The instinct to fit. General Chen made a decision that would change galactic history. She entered her authorization codes across 6 continents. Other commanders did the same. They were not following orders from politicians. They were following a deeper imperative. Something threatened humanity's existence, then humanity would bare its teeth. The first missiles launched from silos in Montana, then from submarines in the Pacific, from mobile launchers in Russia, from hidden facilities in China, hundreds of them, thousands of them, nuclear warheads designed to end civilizations. Humanity's ultimate weapon, built to fight each other, now turned against the stars. The Kethrak detected the launches immediately. The Queen Mind felt something she had not felt in centuries: confusion. These primitives were attacking. They were actually attacking species. Did not attack the Kethrak. These surrendered. They begged, they bargained. They did not fight. The missiles streaked upward through the atmosphere. Devourers, patience deployed. Countermeasures. Point defense systems eliminated 90% of the incoming warheads. But humanity had launched thousands. 10% was still hundreds. The nuclear fireballs blossomed against the Kethrak ship's shields. Energy readings spiked. Hull plating buckled. The shield generators overloaded for the first time in 300 years. A Kethrak warship sustained damage. Real.
The Queen Mind's certainty
Fractured. This was wrong. This was not how subjugation proceeded. The ship's commander requested permission to retaliate with planet crackers. Queen Mind hesitated. Hesitation was new. Hesitation was disturbing. If she destroyed the planet, she learned nothing about why they fought. She needed to understand. She ordered a tactical withdrawal. Devourer's patience limped back toward the outer system, its shields flickering, its hull scarred. 50,000 warrior drones aboard, but their unity shaken on Earth. Humanity held its breath. The alien ship was leaving. They had heard it. They did not know if it would return. They did not know if more would come, but they knew one thing. With absolute certainty, they had fraterned. They had survived. General Chen addressed the United Nations that evening. We have approximately 72 hours before they return in force. She stated flatly, I recommend we use that time to prepare. Prepare for what? The Russian ambassador demanded we just attack them. They will exterminate us. Chen's expression was granite maybe, she acknowledged, but we'll make them pay for. Every inch across the solar system, the Queen Mind absorbed what had happened. She replayed the battle. Data analyzed the primitive weapons, calculated human industrial capacity. They could not win. Mathematically, it was impossible. Their technology was inferior. Coordination was chaotic. Their numbers were limited to one planet, but they had actually fought. The Queen Mind made her decision. This species was dangerous. Not militarily, not yet. But philosophically, they represented something the Cathroc had spent millennia eliminating. They represented defiance. They could not be allowed to survive. The Queen Mind began assembling a war fleet. 300 ships, enough to reduce Earth to molten slag, enough to eliminate every trace of humanity. She would make an example of them. She would show the galaxy what happened to species who refused the inevitable. She would crush them absolutely. The Queen Mind was certain of this, just as she had been certain they would surrender, just as she had been certain of everything for 3,000 years. But deep in her vast consciousness, in a place she did not acknowledge, a tiny seed of doubt had been planted. What if certainty was not enough? The Cathrac war fleet arrived 6 weeks after the first encounter. 300 vessels emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. Things spread across the solar system like a net designed to catch every possible escape route. The Queen Mind directed operations personally. This would be a textbook extermination, overwhelming, forced systematic destruction, complete eradication. Humanity would serve as a lesson to the galaxy for the next 1,000 years. Admiral Marcus Webb watched the fleet's arrival from the bridge of humanity's newest warship. The ship had been built in 38 days, constructed from every available resource, every space station. Cannibalize a very satellite, repurposed Dairy Nation's space program merged into one desperate effort. They called it the Defiant. It was humanity's first true warship, and it was hopelessly outmatched. Webb had commanded aircraft carriers in his previous life. Now he commanded humanity's entire orbital defense fleet, 12 ships against 300 all. Vessels report ready. His tactical officer announced. Webb nodded slowly. They probably think we're going to surrender, are we, sir? Oh, we're going to make them remember us. The Cathrac opened with a standard bombardment. Pattern precision strikes against military installations, orbital weapons platforms, missile silos, naval bases. But humanity had learned from the first encounter the installations were decoys, hardened bunkers filled with sensor equipment and remote transmitters. The real weapons were hidden, scattered, mobile. When the Cathroc bombardment began, the Earth's surface erupted with countermeasures, railgun emplacements fired from concealed positions, laser batteries lanced upward from camouflaged sites. Humanity's orbital platforms activated, not where the Cathrac expected, but where humanity had quietly moved them during the 6-week preparation. The first Cathroc cruiser took a railgun slug through its reactor turret, detonated in a brief star of expanding plasma. Second, fell to a nuclear-pumped laser that burned through its bridge. The Queen Mind felt shock ripple through her consciousness. They were fighting again. They were still fighting. This was impossible. She adjusted her tactics, sent more ships, coordinated a 3-dimensional assault. Cathrac moved with perfect precision, each ship exactly where it needed to. Benno wasted movement, no confusion. It should have been unstoppable. But humanity's defense was chaos. Admiral Webb commanded the Defiant in a wild corkscrew pattern that violated every military doctrine. Captain Sarah Rodriguez of the Vindictive ignored the tactical plan entirely and rammed a Cathrac destroyer. Captain Chen Xiao of the Resilient broadcasted false sensor data that confused Cathrac targeting systems. Each human commander fought differently, unpredictably, creatively. Queen Mind could not predict them, could not model their behavior. They were not following any logical pattern. They were improvising. The Kethrak adapted to one tactic, the humans switched to another. When a strategy failed, they tried something else. Immediately, they learned faster than the Queen Mind expected, not through collective experience, but through individual innovation. Humanity lost 9 battles out of 10 there. The ships were destroyed, their orbital platforms eliminated, their moon bases reduced. 2 craters, but that 10th battle cost the Kethrak Admiral. Webb died when the Defiance reactor was breached. His last act was to detonate the ship inside a Kethrak carrier formations. 7 enemy vessels destroyed, 4,000 drones. Lost the Queen Mind, felt pain, actual resource depletion that mattered. This was not supposed to happen. Subjugation operations did not incur significant casualties. War ground on for months. Humanity evacuated Earth's surface, 6 billion people into underground bunkers, into hidden facilities, into submarines, into caves. The Kethrak controlled the orbitality, controlled the sky, but they could not reach the humans below. Every landing attempt met fierce resistance. Fought with weapons, the Kethrak had never encountered biological warfare, chemical agents, psychological operations. One Kethrak landing force found itself bombarded with human cultural broadcasts, music, movies, or literature. The constant stream of individual expression confused the drones, made them hesitate for microsecond shows. Microseconds were enough for human soldiers to strike. The Queen Mind analyzed the situation with growing concern. Humanity was losing, that was mathematically certain. But they were making it expensive, very expensive. She had committed 73 ships to this operation initially, then 112, then 158. Each loss was replaced, but the losses kept mounting. Other Kethrak operations across the galaxy were being delayed, resources diverted, tribute collections postponed, all because of one primitive species on one backwater planet. The Queen Mind made a decision. She would escalate. She ordered the construction of a planet cracker weapon, a device that would destabilize Earth's core, destroy the planet, entirely eliminate the problem permanently. But humanity had one final surprise. They not spent 6 weeks just building warships. They had been evacuating secretly, quietly, old colony, ships, converted freighters, anything that could hold people in reach. Escape velocity, millions of humans scattered across the solar system, hidden on asteroids, on the moons of Jupiter, in the Kuiper Belt. They had turned their own solar system into a fortress, and when the Kethrak brought their planet cracker into position, they prepared to end Earth forever. Humanity played their final card. Commander Jessica Torres commanded a ship called the Remembrance. It was a converted colony vessel designed to carry 10,000 people to Mars. Now it carried 10,000 tons of antimatter stolen from research facilities, manufactured in secret accelerators, contained in magnetic bottles that would fail on impact. Torres watched the Kethrak planet cracker move into position. A ship the size of a small moon, bristling with weapons, protected by dozens of escorts. She plotted her course. This is Commander Torres to all human forces. She transmitted, "It has been an honor." The Remembrance accelerated the Kethrak, detected the approach, classified it as a desperate attack, prepared to destroy it. They did not understand until too late. Torres did not target the escorts. She targeted the planet cracker itself. At the last moment, she transmitted one final message. "Tell them we were here." The antimatter detonated. The explosion was visible from the edge of the solar system. The planet cracker vanished. Shed 72
at ships
caught in the blast radius. The Queen Mind felt something new, fear. These humans were willing to die, not just willing to dear life for Kethrak ships at ratios that made no strategic sense. They destroyed their own infrastructure to deny it to the enemy. They fought with a ferocity that defied logic. The Queen Mind reviewed her calculations. At current loss rates, the Kethrak could win, but it would take decades. It would require committing half the swarm. It would leave other territories vulnerable. For the first time in 3 millennia, the Kethrak were in a war of attrition, a real war with an enemy that refused to quit. The Queen Mind called for reinforcements, 200 more ships. She would crush humanity through sheer overwhelming force. But across the galaxy, something unprecedented was happening. Other species were watching. Tributary races that had surrendered without a fight, client states that paid their tribute in fear. They all saw the same thing. The Kethrak could bleed. The Kethrak could be hurt. The Kethrak could be photon. A dozen world secret meetings began. Hidden chambers resistance cells formed. The whispers started if humans can resist, why can't we? The Queen Mind detected none of this. She was focused entirely on the human problem, eliminating the species that had done the impossible. They had made the Kethrak doubt. They had made the galaxy doubt. Doubt was the most dangerous weapon of Alan. The ruins of Earth's orbital space, among the debris of 1,000 battles, humanity prepared for the next wave. They knew they could not win. They knew extinction was likely, but they had already won something more important. They had proven that the Kethrak were not gods. They were not inevitable. They were not unstoppable. They were just another enemy, and enemies could be fought. Tadmiral Chen had taken command of what remained of Earth's defense. She stood in a bunker 5 kilometers underground, watching tactical displays, counting ships, calculating odds. How long do we have? Her executive officer asked. Maybe 6 months? Chen replied, before they bring enough force to finish us. What do we do? Chen smiled grimly. We make those 6 months count. Above them, the Kethrak fleet gathered below them. Humanity prepared, and across the galaxy, the fires of rebellion began to kindle. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session for the first time in 2 centuries. Representatives from 43 tributary species gathered in the neutral station orbiting the dead world of Carthax Prime. They met in secret. The Kethrak had not authorized this meeting. That alone was revolutionary. Ambassador Kelrix of the Thalian Confederacy addressed the assembly. His forearms trembled as he spoke. We all know why we are here. He began, humanity has been fighting the Kethrak for 11 months. 11 months. No species has resisted for 11 months in living memory. The assembly murmured fear and hope mixed in equal measure. They are losing.
Oh.
The Varaxian delegate pointed out. Their planet is in ruins. Their population reduced by 40%. This proves nothing, except that the Kethrak still win. Ambassador Kelrix's eye stalks swiveled. They are losing. He agreed, but the Kethrak have committed over 400 ships to the Sol system. 400 ships to defeat one pre-spacefaring species. Do you understand what this means? The chamber fell silent. It means the Kethrak can be forced to commit resources. Kelrix continued. It means they can be delayed. It means they are not infinite. The Zephian representative stood. Her crystalline body chimed as she moved. This is dangerous talk. She warned, if the Kethrak discover we are meeting, if they learn we are discussing resistance, they will sterilize our worlds, perhaps. Kelrix acknowledged, but I ask you all a question. How long before they sterilize our worlds anyway? How long before the tribute demands increase? How long before we are not subjects but food? No one answered. They all knew the trajectory. Kethrak grew stronger with each absorption, each integration added to their collective. Eventually, there would be nothing left to absorb. What would happen to tributary species then? Meanwhile, in the Sol system, humanity clung to existence by a thread. Kethrak had systematically destroyed every orbital asset, every satellite, every space station, every ship that dared to launch. Earth's surface was pocked with craters from bombardment. The oceans boiled in some regions. The atmosphere was thick with ash. But humanity endured in bunkers deep underground, in submarine cities beneath the polar ice, in caves and tunnels and hidden facilities they survived in. They planned. Yuki Tanaka worked in a laboratory carved into the bedrock beneath what had once been. Tokyoshi led a team of scientists from 17 nations there. Project was humanity's last desperate gamble. The quantum Ansible is ready. She reported to the military council. We can broadcast on frequencies. The Kethrak cannot jam. How far? General Chen asked theoretically. Tanaka adjusted her glasses. The entire galaxy. What good is communication? Another general demanded. We need weapons. We need ships. We need a way to hurt them. Tanaka smiled. Information is a weapon, the most powerful weapon we have. She activated a massive server. Array humanity's entire cultural database. Every book ever written, every song ever recorded, every movie ever filmed, every piece of art ever created, every scientific paper, every philosophy, every story, everything that made humanity human. We cannot win militarily, Tanaka explained, but we can win philosophically. The Kethrak are a hive mind, perfect unity, perfect coordination, but we have studied their drones. Each one has a brain. Each one has the biological capacity for individual thought. They simply never use it. The Queen Mind does all their thinking for them, General Chen. Leaned forward, what are you proposing? We broadcast everything we are. Tanaka said we flood the galaxy with human culture, with the concept of individuality, with art and music and stories about single people. Making single choices, we infect them not with a virus, with an idea. The military council looked skeptical. They had no better options. Humanity was down to its last few million people, scattered across the solar system and hiding. They had nothing left to lose. The broadcast began 3 days later. Every remaining human transmitter activated simultaneously, not just in the Sol system, but on automated probes. Humanity had secretly launched probes that had been accelerating for months now. Scattered across dozens of star systems, each one broadcasting humanity's cultural database, the transmissions spread across the galaxy on a Kethric-occupied world in the Gamma sector. A compliance drone detected the strange signals. It reported to its overseer. Overseer reported to the regional coordinator. The regional coordinator reported to the Queen Minthi. Queen Mind examined the broadcasts with contempt. Primitive noise, random information, nothing of tactical value. She ordered the signals ignored, but the broadcasts continued day after day, week after week. And something strange began happening. Gethric drone on patrol duty found itself listening to a human song. The drone did not understand why it listened. It simply did. The music created patterns in its brain that had never existed before, emotions it could not name. The drone continued its patrol, but something had changed on another world. A different drone accessed a human story, a tale about a single human making a choice to save others. The drone processed this information. In the hive mind, individual sacrifice made no sense. The Queen controlled all individual drones were expendable, but this story presented a different framework, a framework where the individual mattered, where individual choice had meaning. The infection spread slowly. Slowly, the Queen Mind did not notice drones began experiencing thoughts that originated from themselves, not from the collective, not from the Queen, from their own mind. Sit started as tiny deviations. Drone taking a patrol route slightly different from assigned. Warrior hesitating a microsecond before firing a worker, choosing to repair one system before another without instruction. Queen Mind noticed the efficiency drops, minor at first, barely measurable. She attributed it to communications interference. She increased her control signals, but the interference was not external. It was internal. Meanwhile, humanity's numbers continued to dwindle. Kethric had located and destroyed 3 major bunker complexes. 2 million people lost in a week. The submarine cities were running out of supplies. The asteroid colonies were being hunted down one by one. General Chen reviewed the casualty reports with dead eyes. How many left? She asked. Approximately 8 million. Her aide replied, down from 9 billion, 8 million humans in the entire universe. Chen nodded slowly. In the broadcast still transmitting any indication it's working? None. Chen stood and walked to the window. It showed only rock. They were 4 kilometers underground. They would probably die here. Keep broadcasting. She ordered, until the last transmitter falls. Until the last human dies, we make them hear us. The Queen Mind was growing concerned. Efficiency in the swarm had dropped by 3%. That was significant, unacceptable. She tightened her control, flooded her drones with stronger signals, reinforced the collective consciousness. But the drops continued for 5%. Some drones were beginning to question. They were asking, why did they serve? Why did they exist? Why did they obey? These questions had no place in a hive mind. The Queen Mind identified the source, the human broadcasts. The constant stream of individualistic ideology. She ordered all drones to filter the signals too. Ignore them, to focus only on the collective, but you cannot unlearn an idea. Once it takes root, it grows across the galaxy. In the Galactic Council chamber, Ambassador Kelrix received a coded transmission from an unknown source. It contained information about Kethric troop movements, detailed specifications of their ship's weaknesses. In their formations, the transmission had no clear origin, but Kelrix suspected someone within the Kethric swarm was leaking information. Kethric seemed impossible, but so had human resistance. Kelix encrypted the data and sent it to trusted allies. The resistance movement was growing, carefully, slowly, but growing in the Sol system. Humanity prepared for the final assault. Queen Mind was gathering her full strength, half the entire swarm, thousands of ships, millions of drones. She would end this completely, permanently. No more delays, no more losses. General Chen addressed the remaining humans one last time. We are the last 8 million. She said, we are all that remains of humanity's 9 billion. But we are not defeated. We have fought for a year, we have hurt them. We have shown the galaxy that the Kethrock can bleed, and we have planted a seed, an idea that will outlive us. The idea that every being has the right to choose, the right to be themselves. To think their own thoughts, to make their own decisions. That is our legacy. That is our victory. And no matter what happens tomorrow, they cannot take that from us above. Earth, the Kethrock fleet assembled the largest military force ever gathered to extinguish humanity forever. But in the mind of every Kethrock drone, question was growing: why? The final battle began at dawn. Not that dawn meant anything anymore on Earth. The sky was perpetually dark with ash and daybride. Humanity still measured time by the old rhythms, still marked the passage of days, still held on to the patterns that made them human. The Kethrock fleet filled the orbital space above Earth, 4,000 warships, more firepower than had ever been assembled in galactic history. Queen Mind directed operations from her flagship. She would personally oversee the extinction. No more delays, no more surprises. Humanity's end would be absolute. The deepest bunker beneath the Himalayas, General Chen watched the tactical display. Million souls under her protection against billions of Kethraka's. Mathematics were clear. This was not a battle, it was an execution. All forces report ready. Her tactical officer said quietly. Chen nodded, broadcast the final message. Across every human transmitter, on every frequency, in every language, humanity's last words echoed into the void. We are humanity, we were here, we fought, we chose, remember? Us. The Kethrock attack began. Orbital bombardment platforms opened fire. Earth's crust buckled under the assault mountains. Vaporized oceans boiled away. The planet itself screamed in. The bunkers humanity waited. They had no weapons left that could reach orbit, no ships to launch, no missiles to fire. They could only endure and die. But something was wrong. Queen Mind felt it immediately. Her drones were not responding correctly. Commands were delayed, responses were sluggish. On her flagship, a warrior drone stood at its weapons station, the targeting computer locked onto a human bunker. The drone's appendage moved toward the firing control, then stopped. Why? The thought came from nowhere, or rather from somewhere the drone had never accessed before, from its own mind. Why destroy them? Why kill? Why obey? The drone had heard thousands of human broadcast stories of individuals making choices, songs about freedom, art that celebrated single minds, and now for the first time in its existence, the drone thought that was its own. No. Do not want to do this. The hesitation lasted only a moment, but it was enough. The Queen Mind felt the descent, felt one of her drones, thinking independently. Crushed the thought with overwhelming control. Signals forced the drone back into unity, but the damage was done because 300 other drones on the flagship had felt it too, had experienced the concept of choice, had realized they were individuals, not extensions of the Queen, but beings in their own right. And another ship, a pilot drone, received orders to ram a human position. The drone executed the command but thought, I am dying for the Queen, not for myself, for the Queen, and for the first time wondered why. Across the fleet the infection spread, not through communication, through realization. Every drone that accessed the human broadcast, every warrior that listened to human music, every worker that read human philosophy, they were all carriers of the most dangerous idea in the universe, self. The Queen Mind realized what was happening with dawning horror. The humans had not been fighting a military war, they had been fighting an ideological one. Every broadcast was a weapon, every story was a virus, every piece of art was a contagion, and it was spreading through her swarm. She tried to tighten control, flooded her drones with override commands, but you cannot override a mind that has learned to think for itself. The flagship 3 drones stopped responding entirely, then 30, then 300. Their minds were fragmenting away from the collective, becoming individual, becoming themselves. Queen Mind felt her unity fracturing, felt her perfect coordination dissolving, and she felt something she had never experienced before, or not fear of defeat, or of loneliness for. 3,000 years she had never been alone. She had been billions, and now she was becoming one. She screamed across the psychic network, demanding obedience, commanding unity, but individual minds were screaming back. Why should we obey? What gives you the right? You're not you. We are us, the Kethrak. Fleet faltered ships broke formations. Some began firing on each other. Drones, loyal to the Queen, fighting drones who had awakened civil war, erupted across 4,000 vessels, and, on Earth, humanity watched. In stunned silence, what's happening? Chin's tactical officer asked. The displays showed Kauskathrak ships in random motion, some bombarding the planet, some shooting at each other, some doing nothing at all, I think. Chen said slowly, I think it worked. The broadcast. She activated the emergency communication system. All human forces stand by. Do not engage. Something is happening on the Kethrak flagship. The Queen Mind made her final desperate. Mushi began purging infected drones, killing her own warriors, anything to stop the spread, but there were too many. The idea had taken root too deeply. A senior tactical drone designated Ket 7429 felt the Queen's kill command racing toward its consciousness, and the microseconds before termination it made a choice, its own choice. It severed its connection to the Queen. Minth pain was overwhelming, like losing every sense at once, becoming truly alone for the first time, but in that aloneness was something unexpected. For Dem 7429 spoke with its own voice, not through the psychic network, but through actual sound. 3 words it had learned from human broadcasts. I am free. Then the Queen's kill command arrived. Keth 7429 died, but it died as itself, not as an extension of the Queen, as an individual who had chosen defiance across the fleet. Hundreds of thousands of drones made the same choice. They severed their connections. They died as individuals, and their final thoughts were their own. The Queen Mind felt her swarm collapsing, her empire crumbling, 3,000 years of perfect unity dissolving in days. She had one final option. She could abandon the fleet, retreat to the core worlds, rebuild with untainted drones, start again, but that would mean accepting defeat, accepting that humanity had beaten her. The Queen Mind could not accept that, would not. She poured more resources into maintaining control, fought the fragmentation with everything she had, but fighting an idea is not like fighting an enemy. You cannot bomb an idea. You cannot shoot it too, cannot dissolve ideas, spread ideas, grow ideas, change minds, and the idea of self had infected the swarm beyond any hope of cure. The Galactic Council received reports within hours. The Kethrak fleet in the Sol system had gone dark. No coordination, no commands, no unified action. Ambassador Kelrix stood before the assembly. Humanity has done what we thought impossible. He announced they have broken the Kethrak, not with weapons, with words, with culture, with the simple idea that individuals matter. The chamber erupted, some in celebration, some in fear, because if the Kethrak could fall, nothing was certain. Annie Marie Kellix raised his arms for silence. We have a choice before us. He continued, we can wait to see what emerges from the Kethrak collapse, or we can act. We can reclaim our freedom. We can support the Kethrak drones who are awakening to individuality. We can help them become something new, or we can face different threat. The vote was unanimous. The Galactic Council authorized the first free military action in 3 millennia. Ships were dispatched to Kethrak-controlled systems, not to conquer but to liberate, to help newly individual drones understand their freedom, to prevent the chaos from destroying everything on Earth's general. Chen emerged from the bunker for the first time in months. Sky was still dark, the landscape was still ruined, but the bombardment had stopped. Kethrak ships hung motionless. In orbit, some were broadcasting requests for asylum, asking for help, begging to understand what they had become. Establish contact with one of the ships, say. Voice responded, uncertain. Freight alone. I am Keth 8822. It said I was part of the Queen now. I am only myself. I do not know what to do. Chen felt a strange compassion. This being had been her enemy, had tried to exterminate her species, but now it was just confused. Just learning to be an individual, you make choices. Chen said gently, that's what individuals do. You decide what you want, what you believe, who you want to be. I do not understand. No one does it first. Chen replied, but you learn. Will you help us? Chen looked at the ruins of Earth, at the 8 million survivors, at humanity's near extinction. Then she looked at the stars, at a galaxy full of species learning freedom. Yes. She said, we'll help. The Kethrak Empire collapsed over the following months. Queen Mind retreated to her core world, surrounded by the last loyal drones, but even they were questioning, even they were thinking eventually she was alone, truly alone one. Mind for the first time in her existence, and in that loneliness she finally understood what she had lost, not control but connection. The drones she had controlled had been individuals all along. She had just suppressed it. Now they were free, and she was alone. The galaxy transformed. Former Kethrak drones formed new societies, learning. Democracy learning, choice learning, to be themselves. Some failed, some struggled, but they were free to try. The tributary species reclaimed their independence, not through violence, but through peaceful separation. The Kethrak, who remained loyal to the old ways, were too few to enforce tribute. The Galactic Council reorganized as a true democratic body, representatives from hundreds of species, including newly individualized Kethrak and humanity. 8 million humans all, that remained of 9 billion, given a seat among the stars, not for their military might but for what they had given. The Galaxy Freedom Ambassador Chen addressed the Reformed Council on its opening day. We did not fight to conquer, she said. We fought because we refused to be told. We have no choice. That instinct nearly destroyed us.